Hey guys, welcome to my channel. If you're new here, come for the true crime and stay for the small town shenanigans. Hello everybody, I'm here and welcome back to another episode. I know, it has been forever, but I'm back, so that's exciting. Anyways, today's video will be about scary run-ins and encounters with strangers. The two of us are close and we always did get along very well together, and were often found together both in school and outside of it. If you were to ask how many times my cousin's parents bounced from house to house, he would just shrug his shoulders. That's how often his parents would move. His parents were a little bit weird, always constantly moving and leaving for business trips. I remember this day like the back of my hand. It was very hot, almost 100. I used to have sleepovers at his house whenever I could get the chance, and this was no different. I arrived at his house in the early hours of the afternoon, and as expected, his parents were away on a business trip. We opened some of the windows so that we could let the hot air out. Granted, this probably didn't help the case at all and most likely made it worse. We turned on each fan to max blast and went upstairs to play video games on his Xbox. We played for at least an hour or two, and eventually we both got hungry. We agreed to go to the spot that was a 10-minute walk from his house. We got dressed, and before we left, we closed some of the windows. That way, if anybody were to drive or walk by, they wouldn't just hop in through an open window. We ordered our food and quickly headed back home. When we got home, we sat in the living room and watched YouTube and whatnot while we were eating. We sat there for a good hour or two before we headed back upstairs to his room, and at around 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock p.m., we closed each window as it was getting dark out. Later that night I was thirsty and decided to go downstairs to get myself a cup of water before bedtime. It was around 10 o'clock p.m. at this point, and I was getting tired, so I quickly filled my cup and then headed back upstairs. My cousin was already in bed scrolling through social media and whatnot. He eventually fell asleep, but I couldn't fall asleep because of how incredibly hot it was. I'm not sure how long I'd laid there awake, but sometime later, I heard footsteps moving around downstairs. At first I chalked it up to his parents coming back early from the business trip, but the footsteps kept pacing between one place. I heard drawers being opened and rummaged through, as well as footsteps going between the living room and the guest bedroom downstairs. I walked over to my cousin and shook him awake. After confirming that his parents were not supposed to be home yet, I quickly tiptoed to the door and locked it. Just as I was about to walk away from the door, I heard it. Footsteps coming slowly up the stairs as if they were trying to be quiet. I knew my cousin heard it too because as soon as I turned my head to look in his direction, he was already quietly turning to the window to unlock it. We were trying to lift it up, but the window was so old that it wouldn't budge. We were grunting as quietly as we could, but it wasn't quite enough. We heard the doorknob trying to be turned, but it obviously was locked. I think this angered the person on the other side, because when they saw the door didn't budge, they started kicking and ramming into it. Now that the clock was ticking, adrenaline kicked in, and we finally got the window open. I yelled at my cousin to go out the window, and he leaped down onto when we were 12 and in the 6th grade. I was hanging out with Cole one Friday afternoon, around the later part of May. We were psyched for the start of the weekend. We wound up at his house since he didn't live that far from me. At one point, my mom called to say that our grandpa was in the hospital. While the issue with our grandpa wasn't expected to be life-threatening, he was kept at the hospital overnight for observation. So both my parents and Cole's parents were planning on staying with him and grandma at the hospital. I was told that I was going to stay at Cole's house for the night with Cole's 15-year-old brother Hunter being in charge while our parents were out. We ordered out for pizza and enjoyed our night. At around 9 o'clock or so, there was a knock at the front door, and Cole went to answer it. I was a bit curious as to who it could be at that time of night, and so I watched from a ways back. At the door were two older guys. They said that they were with the city, and they had been investigating reports about the water pressure supposedly being bad in the neighborhood. They asked Cole if his parents were home, and Cole said they were unavailable at the moment. The guys started asking a bunch of questions about how the water pressure was in the house, and if they could come inside to check. Hunter came over at that point and politely told the guys that the water pressure was fine, and perhaps they should move on to check out other homes in the neighborhood. The guys seemed reluctant to leave, but turned and walked away after Hunter started closing the door. After the door was shut, we looked at each other and shrugged, but didn't think too much of it after that and went back to what we were doing. Eventually, we decided to go to bed. Cole and Hunter shared a bedroom, and I was asked to sleep in there with them rather than me sleeping on the couch or something like that. They climbed into their beds and I quickly crawled into the sleeping bag that they had given me. After talking for a while about random stuff, we eventually fell asleep. Early the next morning, I got up because I had to pee, so I quietly got out of the sleeping bag and went and did my business in the bathroom. On the way back to the bedroom, I heard something in the family room. This was at the opposite end of the house from the bedrooms and the bathroom that I was using. I didn't pay too much attention to it at the time, thinking it must be Cole or Hunter, until I got back to the bedroom and I realized that they were both still in there. Trying not to panic, I woke them and told them that I thought someone was in the house. They quietly followed me, and the moment we walked into the family room, we saw two guys from the night before in there, and it was rather clear that they were robbing the place. One of them started moving towards us as he pulled out a wicked-looking knife. The three of us promptly raced to the front door and somehow managed to get it unlocked and open, and we fled outside. As luck would have it, a cop was driving by at that particular moment. We quickly flagged him down and told him about the guys in the house. The cop called for backup, and within a couple of minutes, several other cops were there, and they proceeded to enter the house. And after some searching, they caught the two guys. The cops figured that the two robbers must have entered from a window in the laundry room that had a broken latch. They had probably targeted our house because while it wasn't empty, they'd probably realized that there were no adults there, and they figured that if we discovered them, we could be more easily dealt with than adults. It was a bold move by the robbers that they ended up paying for. From people breaking into your house to people spying on you, these stories are truly terrifying. So let's begin. For our first story, I've always been good friends with one of my cousins, Cole, who's the same age as I am. For our next story, this happened to my cousin and I when we were 14 years old. Just as one of them flicked the switch, my oldest brother came storming into the garage. He was 17 at the time and very protective of his little sister. He screamed at us to get the light out because he was trying to sleep and that ruined the mood. So I told the girls that I had an idea and I quietly moved to a different spot facing one of the windows. Now it was dark outside, but the moon was bright, so you could see the shadows, and that was about it. It was completely dark inside the garage. I was concentrating on not being found when I saw a shadow pass by the window and stop. Now I was sure there was someone outside, but I thought it might be my dad or my oldest brother about to catch us not in bed, so I froze. My best friend ran straight into me and started laughing. I quickly shushed her and said that my dad was outside and we needed to get back into bed. We quickly grabbed the other girls and quietly got back into our beds, thinking that we had all avoided getting in trouble, and we didn't hear my dad saying anything. I turned over in my bed, but the shadow hadn't moved. By this time I was majorly freaking out. The shadow moved away, and then there was scratching on the garage door. This time, the other girls had noticed. We all started to quietly panic, and we all got into my bed hoping whatever it was would go away. The knocking on the door started, and more giggling coming from outside. We freaked out, but didn't scream. I had just gotten a phone for my birthday, but it was over in the house with the rest of my present. So with no way to quietly call my parents, we yelled at whoever was outside to go away. Cue more giggling and then banging on the windows. We could see the shadow, and it was big, so it would have to be a grown man or a big teenager. We threw a mattress from one of the beds up against the windows so they could unsee us, but he went to another window. We decided to hide in the bathroom with the door partially open so I could see out. The garage door started to rattle and bang like it was being forced open. He had never stopped giggling. I gave up at this point and gave out the loudest scream that I ever had in my life. The other girls started to scream too, and the garage door stopped making noise. We crept out and saw the lights on over at the house and my dad running out to us. And about the same time a car started and took off from the side of the road. We didn't get there in time to see what the car was. Before my dad opened the garage door with the key, he took us all into the house, and my mom calmed us down and finally got us all to sleep by letting us sleep together in the room with a king-sized bed. It was another 2 years before I could sleep in that garage again, and any sleepovers had to be inside the house. My friends and I were so freaked out that we didn't want to sleep out there again anyways. The garage was fairly large with a single garage door on one end and a second, smaller door at the other. Next to the small door was a window and above it was a skylight. At night, the skylight and window made it light enough to easily read a book. Also in the garage was a full-size mattress on the floor and an old dresser which had a mirror on the wall and 2 doors. Above the mirror was one of those disco balls that would put rainbows all over the walls when you turned on the light. I had a twin-sized mattress next to the dresser and my dog slept on the other one. Sometimes I would put the disco ball on the top of the dresser to make it look like it was floating in the middle of the room. That's what I was doing the night that I almost died. It happened about 20 years ago when I was 14. Back then, we lived on a farm. Our nearest neighbor was half a mile away. I had invited 3 of my best friends over and we had been watching Star Trek. That was the end of the episode. And if you liked this story, please hit the like button because it really helps me out. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next Reddit story. Bye.